This is not a Zoom call. This is not a Zoom call. Don't turn that dial. This is not a Zoom call. This is live. And you have entered the realm of Radio Tipping Point. Our show today is titled, This is Not a Zoom Call. That's right, folks. This is not a Zoom call. And you might think this is a bit of a funny title for a show. But it all came from a bit of a tidbit that I found in the Standard. It was a while back. And it was all tied to an event that took place. Actually, it was a musical that was taking place in Manchester. And within this musical, the idea was, or a big part of the musical was to have individuals participate, the audience to participate in the musical, be it a sing-along or whatever the form may be. And the producers stopped the musical because, I hope you're all sitting, because the audience was not enthusiastic enough. That's right. The producers decided to stop the musical because the audience wasn't properly playing their part. And I found this concept very intriguing and started dwelling on what that actually means. How did we get to the point of something like this taking place. And I believe that it has various aspects, and I'd like to dwell on some of these ideas within the next 50 some odd minutes that we have together. Let's start from back to front. Something that I've noticed recently when talking to individuals, and this happened to me a few times over the last couple of weeks. I'll be sitting with somebody. This is physical. This is not a Zoom call. We're talking about physical interactions. We're sitting together, and I would make a comment, and then the individuals would start wiggling their fingers, and I'm going, what the hell are they doing? They're wiggling their fingers. Why are they wiggling their fingers? Now, I don't know if this is intentional or whether they feel this is cute or in vogue. But the wiggling of the fingers was a sign of approval within an online meeting, because we did not want to interrupt the speaker and we wanted to show some appreciation. And so we started with this wiggling of the fingers. So this happened to me twice recently, that I was with people, actually more than twice, with people, and they start wiggling their fingers at me, and I go, and it took me a while to realize why. Actually, I understood where it was coming from, but to truly digest what that means, especially in a sociological perspective. And this is one of many different indicators that I've had, certainly since 21, to show how much the pandemic and conversely the reliance on our online persona has affected us within what I'm going to call the real world, the physical world, that world that we share with each other directly, which, in comparison to what you might be hearing from whoever those virtual powers that be, is not the same. So I know people here in Vienna that before the pandemic, I would meet with them personally, which would very often entail traveling at least a half hour, maybe even longer, one way, to spend some time with an individual. So if you're making that trip, let's keep it to a half hour round trip, you look at that time traveling as an investment. So you're not going to spend 15 minutes with them, right? You'll probably spend a longer time. And very possibly, if you have the luxury, you will not throw it into a time frame. Meaning that it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, depending upon how the conversation's going. Maybe there might be additional individuals there. And if you're like me, always the last one out the door, then it could be very, very long. What can I say? I admit it. I love being with people. And get a thrill out of the interaction of being with people, shooting off ideas, getting inspiration, and making our time meaningful. Okay, so this had to have started maybe in 2021, or maybe even in 22. I saw, oh great, now we have an opportunity to get together again. So I remember the first time I made the request to get together, a physical meeting, and I didn't receive a response. And I thought, that's strange. Maybe they didn't have enough time, they didn't see it. So I gave myself a little bit of time to ask one more time, ask again about getting together. And then I came to the conclusion the problem wasn't getting together, quote unquote. The problem was the physical part. So I went back and I said, well, we could meet online as well. And damn if I didn't get a response right away from the same individual. So they didn't trust themselves to say that they didn't find it worthwhile to get together in person. But online is fine. And I had that recently with somebody else, somebody living here in Vienna that is quite blatant about it and says, well, wouldn't it be easier if we just met online? And that really got me thinking. So, what are these people saying? What leads us to these types of interactions? And where does that lead us to from a societal perspective? Well, let's start off with the obvious, that starting in March of 2020, we got used to putting individuals into our schedule. And for those of you who had already had that as being part of the world, and that was part of my world for a very, very long time, that your day was more or less consumed with your schedule and how that schedule is set up. And you will go from one call to the next. Might not necessarily be as a Zoom call, but it would be an audio call. And you would jump from one call to the next. And you would spend virtually the entire day playing this game of jumping from one call to the next to the final call of the day, which very possibly was on your way home. But that type of scheduling exited the career or the business environment and entered our personal environment. Whereas before we would never think about prompting somebody to meet online, especially if they live within the close proximity. If they're far away, that one we can understand. But that meant that we started treating our personal life like it was managed within the business sphere. So we'll say to somebody, oh, you have 15 minutes, you get a half hour. You might be feeling very generous, and you'll say, oh, this person will actually get an hour. Then if it's a very special occasion, maybe you might say, oh, we'll just start and we'll see how long we need. Because after all, that's much more efficient. The number of interactions we could have with different individuals would be a sign of efficiency, wouldn't it? And so this viewpoint or this way of interaction has taken over. There's another part that I think is equally as important than the efficiency, but it has everything to do with what I'd say two components. Let's start with the first one, which would be the fear of spontaneity. Yes, we have an innate fear that we might not know what to say, or we might not know what to do. And that we cannot control the reaction. And that it might lead us to a spot where we're very vulnerable. And we might regret it. So let's eliminate spontaneity, right? So we don't do anything live. We pre-program everything because we don't have enough faith in ourselves of just being the way we are. And there's a second part to this equation that has everything to do with the expectations of the others. Because if everybody's following some sort of pre-programmed script, then you know how the beginning, middle, and end are going to be, right? So within the realm of human interaction, we don't want to leave anything to chance. And don't even raise the question about the meaningfulness of that, of what we're trying to do here. Because the meaning is all tied to the pre-planning, and that we know what the results are going to be, and we're not surprised, and we're not hurt. So what does that mean for human relations? That we're not surprised and we won't get hurt. That means you already know how the interaction is going to be well before it actually takes place. Heaven forbid, when traveling from A to B, that we might run across somebody that we know, because that's totally spontaneous, right? We can't plan that one. We don't know how that conversation is going to go. And that can make us very nervous. Oh, but that's right. We don't have to worry about that because either we have earbuds that keep out the sound, whatever that sound may be. And more often than not, we spend all our time glaring at our mobile. That means there is no eye contact with any individuals. So even if by happenstance we do see somebody that we know, we could pretend that we didn't, and that means that we don't need to put ourselves in that situation, right? And there's another component that always seems to be part of this mix. and that if the conversation needs to be planned and we need to know what the results are, that means the path of the conversation has to be very, very linear, and there's no deviation, there's no intrigue, there is no inspiration. The satisfaction comes in the pre-planned result before we even started the conversation. And I thought for a long time that the effects of the pandemic are going to stay with us for a long time. And either people don't feel the need to talk about it, or maybe it's just so fresh that we cannot look at all of the last 3 years, or more than 3 years now. We are not able to look at it in perspective. But one thing's for sure, it's made us damn passive. That's right, damn passive. And I can speak from my personal experience, as I suspect a number of you wear different hats based upon whatever group you're with, or what the activities that you're wearing, that you're actually pursuing. That I too wear different hats, and one of them, until recently, or actually still is to a certain degree, is that of an educator. So I know full well how interactive conversations could be prior to March 2020. And mind you, I was used to interaction online. In not necessarily always having to be verbal. Not always having to be visible. But there was that wonderful invention called the chat box, which enabled us to not have to worry about interrupting somebody during a conversation. You could just blurt it out in the chat box. And they can either choose to acknowledge what you wrote, maybe it might be part of the flow, or maybe not. Very possibly you might have given that individual food for thought, right? Food for thought. That it would take them some time after the event to first find your commentary. And you would give them material for reflection. And so when the pandemic hit, I was expecting that type of functionality. Mind you, wasn't necessarily my generation who was mastering all this. Generation much younger. But it was like we all turned into zombies. That's right, zombies. Zombies. And the longer the pandemic went on, the more zombified a number of us became. Some of us might have already had an outlet. Others felt very comfortable within their cocoon. Some of us were uneasy, but didn't know why. And it certainly didn't help with the staccato of lockdowns that acted almost as if it was like quietus interruptus in our social beings. So once we were able to start acclimatizing ourselves, getting back into the real world, the offline world, then we would be hit by another lockdown. Well, I remember very vividly two things. One, watching how the passivity within the students I was dealing with became worse and worse and worse. But it wasn't like after we were able to get together in the flesh that we knew how to do this. I noticed there was a severe problem between the students being able to communicate with each other. They got very much used to being in the cocoon. The cocoon became status quo. And it was culture shock to have human beings around you. There might be some habits that you developed that you weren't even aware. And you brought all of that back into the real world and became super conscious. And I could remember times after we were back into our reality that I would look out and I would have the feeling that I see human beings in front of me. It looks like they're alive, but I wasn't quite sure of where they were mentally. And I'm afraid that we are still to be found within that realm. So what came first? The Zoom call or the zombiedom and the passivity? I like to think this was all an unnatural, premeditated plan to get us to fit into this model where we all feel very, very weak. And this goes way back. I would even say going back to certain components tied to the Industrial Revolution, where it was always man versus machine. Because the machine didn't need any sleep. The machine unless it broke down. Didn't need to take a break. The machine didn't talk back. You can adjust the performance of the machine pretty easy. You can slow the machine down. Or you can speed it up. Speed it up. Speed it up. But by and large, you knew how the machine was going to react. Can we make the same claim about human beings? Oh, let me add something else to the mix with machines. It's very cause and effect. In other words, you perform simple problem-solving exercises if indeed something doesn't happen with the machine. It's all built on logic. And inevitably, you can fix that problem, learn maybe a little bit more about how these machines are actually working and how they react. And this all becomes very predictable. So let's go back to the flip side. And let's look a little bit closer at us as human beings. Are we always predictable? Are we always rational? Is rationality the driver? Is rationality the driver? Does this meet our expectations? If machines make mistakes, it's usually tied to some sort of human intervention. Not exclusively, but that's very often the case. What about humans? And so this has led us to the state where we compare ourselves to technology, we compare ourselves to the machines, and we find ourselves feeling very unworthy. We feel very unworthy because we are not able to match that level of perfection that we expect from ourselves. And this is truly the quandary. This is the quandary. Because we are expecting perfection from ourselves. A perfection we could never reach. That we have developed all kinds of complexes. And when I think about the ability to say something very simple, like, I forgot. Or I wanted to do X, but Y came out. And to mention this in a matter-of-fact way has truly become a rare quality. And I think of certain interactions lately where something would happen and you have to cover it up with some excuse. So either you blame the technology, oh, that mail must have gone in your spam filter. Or, didn't you get my text message? And some people will be quite virulent about this. But how many times do you run across people who will just go ahead and say, you know what? I forgot. I'm sorry. Was there a time when we were willing and capable of forgiving ourselves more? I'm not quite sure. Certainly better than it is today. And I will go out of my way to be very vulnerable and say, you know what? I forgot. I don't know where it is. I screwed up. Because I look at such pronouncements as a means by which I profess my humanity. That's right, I profess my humanity. And what I've noticed with others, not always, but more often than not, that other people see that as permission to profess their own humanity. Isn't that beautiful? The opportunity to profess our own humanity. Because that's what we are, folks. That's what we are. Meanwhile, back at the Zoom call. We go through the motions. We find it all very tedious. We're more than happy to let others dominate the airwaves while we slip into oblivion. Because after all, aren't we being paid to be physically at a location? And we really don't care about the results? And if we deliver more than what they expected, well, that screws up the plan too, doesn't it? That screws up the plan. Because that extra bit throws the rest into disarray. Just like what Patti Smith sang in the song Piss Factory. So you're screwing up the quota. So get on your Mustang, Sally. You ain't going nowhere. Going nowhere. Going nowhere. In case you didn't realize, you have entered the realm of Radio Tipping Point. And our show today is called This is not a Zoom call. This is not a Zoom call. And this is not a recording. Following the adage that a full life is one huge experiment, because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't even know whether you can do it or not. But one thing's for sure, that's not pre-planned. In fact, it's the antithesis of planning. It's bad enough we need to work with predetermined time frames. I understand why. But if we were to hold that up against the measurements that we use within that online Zoom call framework, can we enter that online call without a topic? Can we enter that online call without an agenda? Can we enter that online call knowing there's the chemistry tied to people getting together, sharing their thoughts, acting as a catalyst to each other? It's there where the magic's to be found, right? The magic's to be found there, right? No magic allowed. It's not part of the plan. No magic, please. We're online. We're online. We're online. 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 Yes, we're online. So please, no magic. With magic, we don't know how it's going to turn out. No ad-libbing, please. We're online. Ad-libbing means we might say something that we didn't plan. Maybe we might find out something about ourselves. Maybe it might embarrass us. Maybe it might get us to think. Maybe it might get us to reflect. Maybe it might get us to actually know how we really tick. Maybe you might find some potential about yourself that you didn't even know was there. And that's right, as we look at the expectations on that Zoom call, the real expectation we have is that we are predictable. It's easy for us to slough off the others. it's easy for us to put them into categories. And we're going to put them into categories anyways, it appears, in spite of one's best efforts. But the real fear is that we might react in a way that we didn't expect. React in a way showing something that we never saw before, saw about ourselves. So that breaks the trend on two parts. One, the perfection, that we know what our reaction is going to be, and we all become very predictable. But there's another part that we might end up showing a side of ourselves that we didn't know that it existed, but it scares the living bejeebies out of us. It really scares us because we think that type of behavior belongs to somebody else, but it doesn't belong to us. And then all of a sudden, we find ourselves with that characteristic that we have conditioned ourselves to keep buried and pretend it doesn't exist. Because following the correspondence bias, just only the others act that way because they were born that way. We were born virtuous, right? And that fits our model of perfection. Within our perfect lives, within our perfect intentions, within our perfect reactions, and within that striving of perfection, which of course is the ultimate efficiency, isn't it? This is not a Zoom call. It's not a Zoom call. So how do we break out of this one? I think acknowledgement is definitely the first step towards redemption. But even more important is the ability to forgive ourselves for not being perfect, to not be a machine, to be somewhat unpredictable. Because once you have figured out how to forgive yourself and relish in that imperfection, then you realize it's not the others where the hurt is coming from, and that it's self-inflicted. And if we strive to have these pre-programmed vignettes that run our day, every day, that run our relationships, that run our outcomes, then we shouldn't be surprised that we are locked up into a void. That's right. We are locked up into a void. And we have a choice, folks. We have a choice. We always have a choice. We might not always like the choice, but we have one. And here is my request for all of you. Decide for yourself that you do not want to have that life with that void. I want you, or I wish for you, better said. I want for you that you decide that you're worth it. I would love for you to relish in being quirky, in doing things just for the hell of it. And relishing in seeing those things that you were not able to see before. And relishing in the fact that you could see them. And understanding full well, this is all part of the human experience. And being able to free yourself of the digital umbilical cord and the pre-programmed nature of that environment that we were compelled to lock ourselves into, but we're not compelled anymore. We're not. And that's what I wish for all of you. I really do. Because I know two things. If you find that, it takes nothing away from my experience. Actually, it could complement it quite well. And it allows for an environment that is conducive to forgiveness. It allows for us relishing us being as we are, and relishing that the others are the way they are, because we cannot be like them, nor should we try to be like them. And we should, as long as we're stuck within the confines of this pre-programming, we're never going to get to that point of even coming to the realization, right? And the show, although this might sound strange, is, for me, the living proof of starting a journey and not quite knowing where it's going to end, but understanding there is a clear path between A, B, and C, and where we are and where we want to be. And I relish in this ability to share that trip with you. And for that, not only am I grateful, but very thankful to have spent the time with you this time. And wish for all of you a wonderful rest of the week. And I look forward to the opportunity of taking that journey together with you very, very soon. So with that, we are ending this non-Zoom call. We're ending for today this journey together. And we end with the ability to relish being with each other without knowing what the results were going to be, because we don't need it. There's enough being each other. Ciao.